Hey, everybody, welcome to the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. Your hosts are Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo.
He's cool.
What's going on, Mark?
Oh, we're on. I thought you were just talking. Okay. Yeah. Doing all right. Getting good grades. Future's so bright. Gotta wear shades. I think we had our final rainstorm of the year of the summer, but I'm not sure. And it's not even summer yet.
Wow.
I'm not sure. We had a little bit of rain the other day, and now it's warming up. 89 today, supposed to be in the 90s for the rest of the week. We'll see what happens.
We're going to get into the season of rain soon. So
Yeah,
we've
it's
got
funny.
that.
We're coming out of the season of rain.
Yeah, it is what it is.
hmm
Miami lately has really ramped up. I know I've been saying it for years, but
hmm
the streets are a constant fuss of activity
hmm
in ways that is ramped up than what it was in terms of people and interactions and back and forth and all sorts of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
um, recently I had my car. I don't know if I told you, but my tire went. It blew.
I
Did I
think,
tell you anything
yeah, I
about that?
think you did. Yeah.
So my tire blew, and I got it home.
hmm
Riding on the it was still on the so I went just turned
hmm
and got home luckily.
Yeah. You had
And
to
so I
take it, and you had to take it down off the spare tire carrier that you hadn't touched in years.
oh I figured all that out, but as a consequence I messed up my neck
hmm
and it's still screwed up.
Really?
Yeah, I
Because that
pulled
was like a
something.
week ago.
Yeah, I pulled something. All this is still hurting.
Yeah.
Um, it is what it is. And then the other day, I went to the gas station this past week,
hmm
and when I come back to my car, there's a trail of water under the car.
hmm
So I drove it home. It started. The needle started going higher and
hmm
higher, but it didn't get to the middle. But
Yeah.
just the same, it kept draining out the water.
Yeah.
And so I filled it up to see, and there was some spray coming when I filled it up from the side of the block of the engine, some spray,
hmm
and well, it could be a hose or something, I don't know. But since I've had my neck
hmm
messed up, I decided to just set it aside. But I also caught a cold,
hmm
not as heavy as I did that one time,
hmm
but I'm now dealing with a cold. My neck hurts and my car is not in use. No, I'm really messed up. Like this hurts a
Yeah.
lot
I'm
more.
not laughing at you. I'm laughing in sympathy because I get it, man. I mean, it just, some days it just doesn't pay to even get out of bed.
Well, the neck is the major one,
hmm
even though everything else is major because you need. But
Sure.
as a consequence of all that, I don't have the use of my car now.
hmm
So I've been walking and to the stores.
Which really doesn't help the neck, but
Probably not, but and my dog moving around doesn't. He just decided. Oh, sorry, Beagle. I didn't mean to do that. I went to move him around and I poked him. Sorry, sorry. All right. And so it's just it's like chaotic.
hmm
And so I've been walking, and but then I needed to really re up
hmm
with actual bat like and to walk with that. I mean, I did small little runs, but so I decided to do a run
hmm
to the Walmart on by bus,
hmm Oh wow.
which I haven't done. I haven't used the bus in a long time,
hmm
and so I did that earlier today, and I went walking, and I had to refigure out how everything was. There were people there and stuff, and it's funny because um, he's being such an asshat right now. It's like there's no reason for it,
hmm
at least. Uh, um, so I had to figure everything out. It's $2.25 to take the bus.
hmm
I remember it being like change
Yeah, I
back.
remember it being 35 cents.
So, and I used to go with my grandmothers, both of them,
Mhm.
and we'd go on the buses and everywhere, and they
Mhm.
knew like the whole route. And I went as but I hadn't been since decades.
Yeah.
And when you get back into a bus type situation and you see the people around taking, there's a whole world that
Uh-huh.
you're disconnected from, that you don't know is running parallel to your world. um, and it's quite interesting. So I mean, the
Yeah.
journey itself, so you talk to people,
Mhm.
and um, Nicaraguan ladies, young students, just natural back and forth conversation, short, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and so I made it to the Walmart across the street. Usually it takes like a few. It didn't take that long, but I'm walking there an hour. Like they drop me off and you cross the street and stuff,
Yeah.
and it's a whole different experience. And I get in there and I do my whole shopping, and I got those 75-cent little bags that they
Yeah.
sell. And so off I went, got back on the thing. So the whole trip was an experience in terms of you're on the ground in a different way,
Mhm.
interacting with people, and you really get to see. And one of the funniest things is that the bus says next stop 97th Avenue, and I just sat there laughing because I looked at all the people
Mhm.
and listened, and they're all talking Spanish.
Mhm.
And the bus is saying it in pristine English.
Mhm.
Next stop, 97th, and this is and people are talking their Spanish and stuff. And I just got a grin because there's such a juxtaposition.
Yeah.
It's so Miami to have that
Mhm.
interplay happening in that specific way. But I found it ironic. You know what I'm saying? Just
I
because
do.
it's
I know
uh,
exactly what you mean.
yeah, it was such a weird thing. And then I came back, but it did remind me of back decades ago when I used to do that and
Mhm.
stuff, because that's all my grandmothers, they didn't drive,
Yeah.
really. So that's how they would go.
Yeah.
So whatever.
And you're right about it. It's almost like a parallel universe because there's a whole different etiquette. There's like a whole different language almost. I mean, everybody who rides the bus normally, regular as their main means of transportation, they know how things work.
Yeah.
And if you've been away from it for a little while, there's certain things that you forget about.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing about the bus talking to you, the next stop would be 97th Street. We never had that. I mean, you had to be watching, you had to know the route and you had to know where the next stop was, what stop you were going to get out at. Because God forbid you go past the stop you wanted to get off at. The next stop may not be for another 5 miles down the road. Now you got to walk back even further.
It used to
Yeah.
be that you could grab the hanger,
Hmm.
the wire, and when you pulled on it, it would go cling cling.
Yeah.
Now it's electronically, so you can still pull the wire,
Hmm.
but it does boom,
Yeah.
and it's an electronic signal
Mhm.
that's been sent. But before it was more mechanical.
Yeah. It was a bell. And
Yeah,
all that told the bus driver was you wanted to get off at the next stop. It's not like
right,
he pulled over and let you out. He
right.
would stop at the next stop. Because I don't know about the buses there, but here, even now, and back when I rode the bus down in the Bay Area, California, if there was no signal that somebody wanted to stop at a bus stop and there was nobody at the bus stop waiting, they just go right past it. They wouldn't pull in and stop.
If there's nobody waiting, they just keep going.
Yeah. If there's nobody waiting and nobody wants to get off there, they just keep going, just blow right past it,
Yeah,
you know. So
that's
you
right.
had to you had to be aware of where your stop was and what stop you were going to get off because if you missed it, you were just toast, you know. Uh,
Hold on. Give me 1 second. Let
all
me.
righty. Okay. See what we got out here. We got Steve, Harneal Media. How you doing tonight, Steve? And we've got Linda Lindsay. How you doing tonight, Linda? Hope you're doing well. I know you're doing well. We just got finished with dinner not too long ago, and I still got a full belly from it.
I
So
can't think like that, so I let him out. He's in
yeah,
the living room now.
yeah. Talking about almost parallel universes, but a whole different life that you're not familiar with going on. That reminded me of something that I told Linda I was going to talk about it anyway, but it kind of dovetails in with what you're saying. In that you were never in the military, correct?
No.
Okay. So there is a phrase that you may be aware of, maybe you've heard it, but you don't realize the power it holds. I've talked about him before. There's a YouTuber I watch. His name is Nick. He goes by the Fat Electrician, and he is a historian. I mean, he's school trained and all this other good stuff. He's not a professor, and he doesn't have a degree, but he is a student of history. But every once in a while, he goes on these little rants, I like to call them, where he reminisces about his time in the military. He was a medic and an ambulance driver. And he did a little, about a 2.5 minute rant, I'll say, on the phrase make a hole. You familiar with that?
No.
Make a hole? It is a diplomatic, socially acceptable way of saying, get the hell out of the way. If, for instance, the commander comes into your office and says, go get Lindsay. He's down in that room down the hall. You go, yes, sir. You jump up and you head out and you get about halfway down the corridor and there's 30 guys standing around, just all in the way. You have a purpose. You're on a mission. You just say in an authoritative voice, make a hole. And it's like Moses. The green sea will part and you just motor on through, come get me, and we come back. Make a hole has power. We need something on the civilian side that has that power. I mean, it doesn't matter what rank you are. It doesn't matter what rank the other people are. Officers will step back and get out of the way of lowly enlisted people that are on a mission. They have something they got to do. Make a hole, and the pathway just clears. We need something like that in like grocery stores or fairgrounds or just wherever there's a bunch of people and you got to get somewhere quick. We need that some socially acceptable way of saying, get the hell out of the way. you know,
Yeah, it was pretty chaotic. Go ahead.
I, I mean, and again, nobody gets their feelings hurt. It's something that is instilled in you almost from the very beginning in basic training because you may be that guy who has to say, make a hole because you've got to get somewhere like right now. We need something like that because I don't want to be standing in the cereal aisle with two people deciding whether they're going to get Fruity Pebbles or Lucky Charms. Dude, I've got Cheerios in my sights. Get out of the way. You can say, excuse me, and hope they'll end their conversation. Some people will say, pardon, and that can work. But we need something like make a hole and make it wide. Now, I have heard that some law enforcement use it, some firefighters, EMTs. I've heard some of them use it. I've heard the Navy has one that's gangway. They say gangway, that means get out of the road. We need something like that. And I can't figure out what the hell it is. So we need to come up with something and just make it a consensus right here, right now. If we hear somebody say that, we're not going to get all upset. We're not going to get all pissy. We're just going to step back out of the way. Then maybe we'll try to figure out what the hell's going on. But we need something that people are going to react to. Now, Frankie's got a good one. Frankie says a couple years ago you could sneeze in a store and people will clear out of the way. They would evacuate the store, yeah. But now they just look at you like, what's the matter with you? But we need some way of telling people to get the hell out of the way that's perfectly acceptable. And I
Yeah.
can't think of what it should be.
I think it's an impossible ask, but if somebody comes up with something good, I mean, hell, it's
You know.
just in a place like Miami,
Mhm.
you'd have to do it in Spanish too,
Well,
because
I don't know because the minute you learned what the phrase is, because like when we were over in Germany, I may not have known exactly what the words meant, but there were certain phrases that I would hear and I know what they were trying to convey.
when you start getting that comfortable with knowing what people are conveying in other languages, you
Mhm.
might end up saying that your daughter's pregnancy brings
Yeah.
much joy to her. So you got to be careful with that.
Understood. But if you heard over in Germany, if you heard Vorsicht, you knew something was happening. Something may be falling. That was basically danger, warning, look out. So you may not know what direction it was coming from, but you knew something was coming. So but
I
you had to
wouldn't know.
learn
You'd have to learn it, I guess.
that. Mhm,
But it's kind of like that, like the bus saying everything in English, and the people
mhm,
are going. I mean, I'm sure that there's key things that the people there, but they're not using English.
mhm.
Um,
True.
there's English spread amongst people,
Mhm,
but the the consensus is they're just going on in conversations about stuff in Spanish. And I guess, remember, I haven't been in a bus
mhm.
for decades, or I mean, in this type of scenario, I can't even remember the last time I was on a bus. But when you're in there, I mean, even though I'm from Miami, my transportation is usually via car,
Mm,
and I get to the places, and sure, you hear the Spanish and this and that, but the fact that I was transported in a vehicle,
mhm,
a public county vehicle that had information being transmitted in English,
mhm,
but I was sitting amongst people that probably frequent the bus
mhm.
because that's their go-to form of transportation due to whatever number of reasons.
Sure.
A lot of old people as well,
Mhm.
couples and such. But to hear it really gives a sense of the area of what's
Mhm.
going on, so it's really even more Spanish than I can think.
Well, now let me ask you this about that because I really honestly don't know. Obviously, if you see Walmart, the sign says Walmart. If you see CVS or Rite Aid, the sign says CVS or Rite Aid.
Yeah.
But are most of the signs on businesses are they in English or Spanish?
The major brands are just what they are.
Right.
And the
But I
mom and
mean,
pop stores are a it just depends on what it is. If it's a tax thing,
mhm,
I don't know. It depends. If it's small mom and pop stuff, they'll say it's gonna say bakery on it anyhow, let's
mhm.
say. But
Okay.
it'll say like Matilda's bakery, like the lady's Spanish
Mhm,
name or whatever.
yeah.
So it'll do that. And
Mhm,
some places, because supermarket is supermercado in
mhm,
Spanish, so it's kind of almost the same thing. So, but for an outsider coming in, they would probably notice it more than me that I'm used to seeing those things. So to me, it's normal,
right.
or I just don't see it beyond anything. So if I'm in a, like when I was in California
Mhm,
and I saw signs, sometimes there were Spanish signs,
right.
but it made no difference to me because obviously I'm bilingual. I'm from
Mhm,
Miami,
right.
so I saw it normal. But
Right.
when I went up north and there was less of that and stuff,
Mhm,
I'm thinking of it now, but I didn't notice the difference because I could go either
right.
direction.
Mhm,
But for people that can, so I don't know how, but like if you're one language, it
mhm,
would probably stand out significantly. But like
right.
A Walmart's a Walmart.
Right. Absolutely. You know what you're getting. But I was talking more along the lines of because like we have the same thing here. We'll have like La Plaza Taqueria. Now I probably didn't pronounce that right, but I know what that is. It's a small family owned restaurant. They may have a booth or two, or it may be all to go. But it's It's a place where you can go order a meal.
I think Plaza has
Hmm.
more of an Italian and Spanish
Hmm.
slant. So that word is a Latin
Hmm.
thing derived
Hmm.
from, and
Right.
taqueria is taqueria,
Right.
but you
Right.
would understand what it means because it's something so
Right.
typical in the area.
Right,
Um,
exactly. And that's what I mean. You get used to it. You may not be able to speak or read or understand the language, but you know what that is. You know what a bakery is. You know what a butcher shop is. Not because you understand Spanish, but you know that if you go in there, that's what they sell, you know.
yeah, so like things like Walmart.
Hmm.
So in Spanish, they don't say Walmart.
Right.
They would say, or at least here in Miami, they say Walmart,
Hmm.
just like I said it, Walmart, Walmart.
Hmm.
There's no distinctive letters that are bracketing it
Yeah.
into its place because it's a Spanish adaptation, like Furniture
Yeah.
Waterhouse.
Hmm.
There used to be a company here called Furniture Waterhouse, and when I was little, we would be driving with my grandmother to bring her over to Sweetwater, spending the weekend here, and we'd pass by the Furniture Waterhouse.
Hmm.
And my grandmother, and remember, I was a little kid, so it's not like I could read,
Hmm.
and she'd always say, "Oh, look, Furnituri Waterhouse."
Yeah.
And I always, growing up, until I read it one day, that I
Hmm.
even paid attention to it because no kids worried about furniture.
Hmm.
But one day I actually looked at the sign and I said, "Oh, it's not Furnituri Waterhouse. It's Furniture Waterhouse." But growing up here, you just accept what's given because you're hearing it from the adults and stuff. So
Sure.
like Home Depot is pretty much Home Depot, but they'll say it Home Depot.
Hmm.
It's weird because there's an accent involved in it, a Spanish accent. Um, you know, Publix is Publi,
Hmm.
Publi. If I talk to somebody, so I can perfectly say Publix, but when I'm talking to people like just a neighbor or something, and the topic comes up, and they speak Spanish predominantly or completely,
Hmm.
I can't say I'm talking to them and then say, "Oh yeah, and I'm going to go to Publix,"
Hmm.
because it'll take them a little bit to put it together.
Decipher. Yeah.
So I just say what they say, which
Hmm.
is what I would say in Spanish anyhow, because that's the typical thing. And that would be Publi.
Hmm.
So I'm going to Publix would be I'm going to Publi,
Uh-huh.
or the whole sentence in
Sure.
Spanish. So it's weird because it's all changed around to fit the mold of how it phonically works for
Sure.
people in Spanish. So if you multiply that, so that's why I found it ironic with the sound of the bus
Hmm.
saying your next stop is 87th Avenue.
Yeah.
And the people, and I looked at all the people, and you see the old ladies talking with each other, and
Hmm.
or I know, that they have no idea what the hell that thing is saying.
Or they don't care or not paying attention to it.
No,
But
they
yeah.
don't. No, they don't. Like the way he was speaking a perfectly clear
Hmm.
English, and the use or the manipulation of words turned into Spanish that they would use. And I'm speaking broadly. I'm sure someone would know there, but I'm saying that the
Hmm.
the lay of the land in that was that the irony was that none of these people know that thing. In other words, I found it like it's a useless thing considering the population and
Yeah.
what they lean towards. So
Yeah.
I just found it hilarious. It was one of the outliers of my trip.
Hmm.
Um, it just it was an
Struck you
incredible
as funny. Well, some of that
structure.
stuff is funny. I mean, but I wondered about that, and the whole bilingual thing has kind of, in the back of my brain, kind of fascinated me, kind of not, for years. My last platoon sergeant in the army was he was from Puerto Rico and had a very very thick accent. When he joined the army, he didn't speak English. He learned to speak English in the army, and um, he had a real thick accent. But whenever he spoke Spanish to one of the other officers or NCOs or one of the troops that spoke Spanish, didn't matter what they were talking about. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I could decipher what they were talking about because army speak is army speak. If you needed an aircraft logbook, they didn't translate those words into Spanish. So there would be a sentence and it would be interrupted in the middle with the word logbook. So they would transition almost seamlessly from Spanish to English for just that brief second and then go back to Spanish without breaking stride.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, talking about Publix and Publi, the ability, the mental gymnastics you have to do to be able to go from one to the other and say them correctly to where people across the room who have no idea what language you're speaking, let alone understand it, can pick up, okay, he wants a logbook. Now I need to know which one he wants. I'm kind of prepared for it. Lindsay, give me the logbook to 847. Okay, and I grab it. Here we go. And it was just second nature. But it was the mental gymnastics to be able to do that, to go from Spanish to English to Spanish without even taking a breath. I found that kind of fascinating.
There's some people in there's some places in Spain,
Mhm.
like even from where my grandfather was from, if they decided to, so there's standard Spanish or Castilian,
Mhm.
just standard Spanish, but they have different varieties depending on where you, like we've talked about that, like
Sure.
in Mexico they have different word usage and whatever everywhere. But even within that, if they decided to speak their regional Spanish, which
Yeah.
is basically a Cantabrian, um,
A dialect.
we could call it a dialect. Some people argue the point within Spain. They'll say, no, it's not sufficient. That language died off too long ago. And then the Cantabrians will say, no, we have plenty of words that we use because it's an old,
Sure.
so. But if they break into that,
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
And yet it's Spanish. Yes, it has fluctuations, but you don't have the keys to each word. Those switch up words, um, like a baby or a boy. What, you know the word for boy in Spanish, right?
Well, I know a couple.
Well, give me
I know
one.
muchacho and mijo.
And what if they're very small?
I thought that was mijo for little boy.
Do you know the one niño?
Nino and Nina. Yeah, I do know those two. I just forgot.
That's just a different variation of the same thing, though.
Hmm.
Okay, but there's another variation that I
Hmm.
would never use, yet people like my grandfather, because he was from there,
Hmm.
instead of saying niño,
Hmm.
would say mozo.
Okay.
From niño to mozo, it's night and day.
Yeah.
It's like, and so there's a ton of things like that. But if you consolidate all the variations that maybe a one region would speak, even like like with Mexicans, they use a lot of certain words. If
Hmm.
you block it all together and then throw it at somebody that's not used to that, then all of a sudden you're like, but Miami is a bit of a melting pot even of Spanish.
Right.
So in a strange way, Nicaraguans end up speaking a little bit like Cubans. Puerto Ricans
Hmm.
still have Puerto Rican, but they sound closer to Cubans than anybody else. Everybody starts to sort of quad, like
Okay.
converge into a general type of Spanish, more or less.
Hmm.
Um, so it's
I
weird.
can. I've wondered about that if it was the same with other languages because, but the closest thing I think we have to that with English would probably be the variations between like the United States, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, the other English speaking countries. We also have our own ways of saying certain things, our own meanings for certain words, and different words for the same item or the same type of person. You
Have
know,
you ever heard a Jamaican talk English?
oh, yeah.
They
Oh
can
yeah.
talk English so that you understand it,
Hmm.
or they could talk English, still English,
Hmm.
where you have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yep, I get that a lot from my first platoon sergeant. As it turns out, was from Haiti, and he was more or less the same way.
Yeah.
The entire state of Hawaii is that way. You talk with someone from Samoa or a native Hawaiian, or even some of the Japanese, and they'll speak English just as plain as you and I are right now. But when they switch over and start talking to a couple of Filipinos or a couple of other Hawaiians or a couple of Samoans, suddenly it just changes completely. They start dropping certain words, and they have other words from other languages that mean certain things. And it becomes this mixture and this blend of, and they just call it pigeon because it is English, but it's peppered with Hawaiian words and Samoan words
Yeah.
that all means the same thing. But if you don't pick up on that kind of stuff, you can just be lost and have no idea what the hell is going on.
You can usually tell who's Cuban
Mhm.
in a general sense, although the lines get blurred because of the language. But in speaking, when they drop certain key words that only Cubans would use, even though Puerto Ricans would, the closest speaking to Cubans are Puerto Ricans. And one word is like for bus.
Mhm.
In Spanish, the standard thing would be to say bus
Mhm.
or autobus.
Mhm.
But Cubans don't do that. They know what autobus is,
Sure.
but they just simply don't use it. They
Mhm.
say guagua,
Okay.
guagua. So a
Okay.
bus is a guagua. So if you're you see, so I asked when is the guagua coming in Spanish. I asked a person, and they quickly answered, and
Mhm.
it let me know that the guy is a Cuban guy,
Mhm.
or at least it let me know who's a Cuban guy. Like if I had to bet money, he's a Cuban guy.
Mhm.
And then there was another lady that I knew she was Nicaraguan lady because she said certain words
Mhm.
that Cubans would not use
Right.
unless she's a Cuban that was born in Nicaragua. I don't know, but the point is that you can sort of pick that out. But
Mhm.
the guagua is a pretty barbaric because in fact it's autobus,
Mhm.
um, autobus. But the guagua comes from the Canary Islands.
Ah. Okay.
Officially, since automobiles and vehicles were, they started calling it guaguas
Mhm.
in Canary Islands, and because of the influx of Canary Islanders to Cuba, which we've talked about before, it spread through the island to the point that Cubans just simply say guagua. And to double down on it,
Mhm.
if you ask Cubans many times, I mean, unless they don't know history, unless they know history,
Mhm.
they'll think that that's absolutely just Cuban, and
Mhm.
that's it. They've taken it, and it's become Cuban, but it's
Yeah.
actually a Canary Island thing. And the
Yeah.
reason that they call it guagua is because of the horn. Guan guan.
Mm.
That's why. So a bus is a guagua
Because of
in
the horn.
Canaries and for Cubans because of the sound the horn makes.
See, that kind of stuff is interesting to me. Now, I'm never going to forget that. I may forget guagua, but now that I know it's because that's the sound the horn makes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And Linda and I are going to be throwing that back and forth at each other. Watch out for the guagua. Okay. You know,
It's just hilarious.
yeah, see, I'm never going to forget that now. Thanks for putting that in my head. Now,
A lot of
I dig that
people,
kind of stuff, man.
a lot of people would probably like if they're from other parts of
Mhm.
the Spanish world, South America, Central America, wherever, and they heard that,
Mhm.
they would think it's crude.
Yeah.
It's not couth or
Mhm.
something to that fact. Um, but the Caribbean is more lackadaisical or laid back. Well,
Mhm.
laid back.
Well,
So the language is a little bit more kind of the equivalent of what Jamaicans, when Jamaicans roll it back slightly and start talking like
with the local dialect. Yeah.
yeah, so they'll do that in the Cuban and Puerto
Hmm.
Rican and Dominican world.
And that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but it kind of makes me happy that that exists in other languages, because it damn sure exists in English. And I've often wondered if that kind of thing did exist. Um, uh, I knew that there were different accents and dialects. For instance, I heard in an interview that when the Terminator got real big, and they went to dub it into German, they wouldn't let Schwarzenegger do his own voice in German, because he's from Austria, and the Austrian accent is seen in Germany the same way a real deep Alabama Southern accent is seen here, as kind of country bumpkinish. And nobody would take it seriously if he did it in that Austrian accent. So they
Interesting.
wouldn't let him do it. So I knew there were regional accent things. It's kind of like I don't remember which. I watch a lot of TV from the UK. I don't remember which show I was watching, but they were talking about airline pilots, and the most comforting accent that an airline pilot can have is that standard. Uh, what do they call it? It's kind of a not really a posh London
Atlantic,
accent,
standard Atlantic, whatnot.
but it's kind of a standard British accent. It's very it's calming. It's authoritative, and the absolute least loved accent was the Geordie accent from up around Newcastle. They're
Boy,
like,
we're all going bye
you,
bye, folks.
you don't want to hear a pilot with the Geordie accent. No, 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 no. Let him serve drinks. Don't let him fly the plane. So I knew that kind of thing existed.
Put your
Yeah.
seatbelts on, everybody, because we're going bouncy, bouncy.
Well, it's just like here. You don't want to get on an airplane and have somebody go, "Give me your ticket and get on this some bitch. We gonna get this airplane go real fast." You
You
know,
don't want to hear the pilot say, "And we're ready to go." Yeehaw!
that's it.
You don't want to hear that.
Saddle up, boys. We're on our way.
You do not want to hear that. Just
It's like, oh no, this is not gonna be good.
but it's those are cultural assumptions, and to be honest with you,
Mhm.
um, some people will believe stuff like that and utilize it. Um, what do you call it? Broadly across the population that speaks Southern like that. And if you run across someone that's highly intelligent that just happens to be part of that
Yeah,
area of the country, they're gonna put people in. So you got to be careful with the kind of stuff. But it is an
do
assumption
but
built in.
we're all susceptible to it. I mean, could you picture a could you picture an art critic from Louisiana? I love to see the great masters, their use of light and composition in these paintings. Nobody's going to take that accent seriously. The guy may have more degrees than a thermometer and maybe the greatest artist in the world, but just for some reason, that accent doesn't instill a lot of confidence
But
and
for
authority.
I agree with what you're saying. But for me,
Mhm,
so let me see if I can get this out. So for me,
mhm.
I agree. I know that that's the standard broad thing, but for me, in a specific way, it depends on the content that's being transmitted.
True.
Because if a person, you know, is okey doke
Hmm.
and the explanation is okey doke, then it's
Yeah.
like it is what it is. But if it's a country accent, but the person is giving you a detailed
Mhm.
explanation, you can it's on you to then realize that, well, wait a second, so I've got this bias, but this person is actually delivering an explanation, and so that would be
Hmm.
something to break from the presumption
Hmm.
of, but it's not easy for everyone to do, and probably not even realistic for most folks to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's and it also depends on where you are. And what the situation is. Like Jamie, he has a good one here. What about if you were go in and have major surgery? Would you feel comfortable if the surgeon was covered in head to toe piercings and tattoos?
With nipple clamps.
Well, some people pay extra for that, but it's it. I figure if he's a qualified surgeon, who am I to judge? Just make
Well,
me better, doc.
if let me qualify what Jamie Page said.
Hmm.
If we're in a remote, isolated hilltop area,
Hmm.
and it just so happens that an operation needs to take place, and the only surgeon that's on that hilltop area in the middle of the wild tundra happens to be covered in tattoos, and we're miles away from an official hospital, then the roll of the dice will be in that direction. However, if we're in a cityscape environment, this is a different story, because a person that tattoos themselves in that extreme, I'm not talking about like a heart that says mom on the shoulder. I'm not talking about, something on the leg or a word or this or that, but I'm talking about full scale. Are you talking about those people with the two tongues and the nose rings? And because if you bust something out like that, Jamie Page, in front of me, I mean, what's your answer going to be? Yes.
Well,
Go ahead, doc.
it's quite possible you have somebody who has turned their life around and gone through medical school, and maybe that was something in their former life when they were young and stupid and ran with the wrong crowd and did a bunch of stupid things and eventually got their head out of rectal camouflage and
Mhm.
did go to medical school and became a doctor. I mean,
I'm not as open minded as you on this one.
I look at it this way. If I break my leg, I don't really care what the person setting my leg looks like. Set my leg and let's get a cast on it so I get better. I really don't care what that person looks like.
If they're gonna do some deep dive surgery,
Hmm.
and you're interviewing, and the guy's covered from head to toe with tattoos, and that's gonna be a throw. That's gonna be a something that
Well,
throws me,
maybe.
because unfortunately, one tattoo, two tattoo, just hidden or normal. But if a person is willing to cover their face or this or that, if the person's willing to go all leather and frickin' what do you call those studs, leather and
Oh yeah.
studs, I'm sorry,
Well, the first
something
place they're
really,
not going to let him anywhere near the MRI because all that stuff's going to be heading straight for that hole in the machine.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go with the safer bet. And by the way, if you had a lineup of doctors and one of them was like that,
Mhm.
you tell me what most people would pick.
Well,
I don't know what that would be, but I would strongly put my money on that they wouldn't pick him as the first go, um, because that is a turnoff in that
and then
kind of a
and
situation.
and more to your point right there, if he wasn't at least competent, he wouldn't be on staff.
Now, let me ask you this. Well, let me ask you this. But what if it's different? What if we're talking about language and you come into the office and say, "All right, doc, this is the situation, and we're interviewing," and he looks at you and says, "Okay."
Have you been to the doctor lately?
I haven't,
Have you been to a hospital lately?
but
That's
but
more
my
common than you know, dude.
okay. Well, here it's funny because here in Miami, or
Mhm.
last few times I've ever been, well, the nurses, some of the nurses might be from other countries like Haiti or
Mhm.
wherever, but that's not the whole, like, secondary tier. nurses
Mhm.
where they come in to clean up the whatnot and this and that. But I'm
Uh,
just talking from my memory.
mhm.
We're in Miami. Okay, let me. This is important. The problem. So just in Miami,
Mhm.
Miami, in a sense, you can tier it.
Mhm.
You have the world at the first level, which is
Mhm.
everybody that does the odd jobs and the this and this and that,
Mhm.
newly arrivals or people older age and all that, retirees and that's a Spanish base
Mhm.
and other folks, but there's a lot of the Spanish base. Another category of the tier is people that are in jobs that are a little bit more involved in this and that. Those people, a portion of them only speak Spanish depending on the job,
Mhm.
but the majority are bilingual and
Right.
maybe not eliminating accents or going into deep discussion in English, but sufficient to function the thing. Then you have another one where there's more involved and sales and other this and this and that. And those
Business. Yeah.
people will still be bilingual because remember, this is a generational thing.
Sure.
They'll be bilingual, but they can easily fluctuate through
Mhm.
both. And
Sure.
then you have your professionals, and those would be people
Mhm.
that in a doctor's office or in a hospital,
Mhm.
but people that work the frappuccino machine at the hospital or whatever,
Mhm.
you're not going to expect 100%, that you're going to get English. But if you go into a doctor's office, if you go to a private practice, there's Cuban specific practices
Mhm.
and you'll get more Spanish, but often than not, they speak English as well. It's just that they
Sure.
opt for the Spanish for the clientele.
Well, that's their
So,
clientele. Yeah, they have to.
so I've not seen that you're saying.
Okay. Well, out here we have a lot of Filipinas are nurses. So a good percentage. I mean, even up here in Southern Oregon, where there's not a whole heck of a lot of people,
Yeah,
a lot of Filipinas, a lot of Hispanics, and I'm including folks from Mexico, Guatemala, Nicaragua,
Honduras.
Honduras to a certain extent, but more from Mexico and Guatemala. Um, and you see a lot of doctors from India. I mean, a lot of doctors from India. More coming from Asia. But we're on the Pacific coast, so it stands to reason. A lot coming from Asia. There are a lot of Japanese and a lot of Chinese doctors, or of Asian ancestry. Um, so it's kind of a mixed bag on who you're going to get and what you're going to get. But my opinion is I'm kind of with Jamie on this. You ain't dating him or her, they're fixing you up. I figure if they're on staff at a hospital, they've at least got to be competent because the hospital ain't going to put up with it if they're not. I've not run across a situation where we've had head to toe tattoos or piercings or anything like that. The holes in the ears that you can drive a Subaru through. I've not had that situation come up, but people of all kinds of backgrounds
Yeah.
out
What if
here,
the
and
person
it's
turned?
just like, doc,
What,
fix me. You
what
know.
if you're in the room and you're
Mhm.
sitting there and the doctor's with his back turned to you and you're just waiting patiently because he's gonna about to talk with you and he
Mhm.
turns around and he's just finishing a bowl of blood and he's got the big earrings. He goes, "Okay, we can now talk." So look, I was thinking some tribal thing, and the blood squirting down. Here's the thing: you're with Jamie on that,
Mhm.
and that is your choice, and
Mhm.
that's Jamie's choice.
Just fix me. I don't care who you are.
Just fix you, and you don't care who
Mhm.
you are. I'm just saying that, in my perception,
Mhm.
for that position, and at the level that I described it,
Mhm.
you're okay with it. I'm not.
Yeah.
If they're covered with tattoos to an extreme amount, where they seem more like they should be in Anthrax or Megadeth than in a
Yeah.
hospital, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. They may be brilliant at microscopic surgery. If they're the last choice in the thing, okay. Now, it just makes sense to me, balancing out the so it just makes sense to me. I don't know that what you guys are saying is reasonable in my mind. It's not reasonable. If
Now,
somebody's covered in tattoos, I'm sorry. I don't want them to. Now, if they're cooking something, okay. If they're building a construction site thing, fine. If they're a lawyer, now I got to think twice.
mm,
Why? Because there is, look, tattoos
mm-hmm.
occur in the military, navy, and so on, and that's understandable, and that's a historical thing, and whatever. Um, but there's certain scenario, and they could become doctor, and they could be doctors in the army, navy, and whatnot, and still have tattoos. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying covered from head to like somewhere in between that where it's a little too uncomfortable. You get what I'm saying?
I do understand. I did know a nurse when I had my gallbladder removed. There was one nurse who had a full sleeve down one arm, but they all wore scrubs. So you saw a little bit around, when the sleeve was pulled up,
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
you know. Doctors, I've not seen that, but nurses, yeah. I now taking everything you just said into account, I'm also talking about an emergency situation. I'm talking about you've had an accident, basically. If you're talking about me going to a family doctor, I don't feel well, so I'm going to my family doctor. Hey, doc, you want to check me out? Maybe, I don't know, do I got the flu? Is it something like this? Now we're talking something a little bit different.
Okay.
Again, I don't care what their background is, their ancestry is. I want a good doctor. I don't want somebody who's just going to shake a bottle of Motrin over my head and tell me to hope I feel better. That'll be, $65 pay on your way out. I don't want that crap. And in fact, I went to one doctor. We were new to the area. Our doctor closed his practice and went up to Reno. We were down in a little town nobody's ever heard of called Dayton, Nevada. And he went up to Reno and he started working at the VA hospital. And so we needed a new doctor. So we went to this one doctor. I went there one time. I had just turned 50 years old and I'm feeling, yeah, I'm 50. I need to get a physical, need to get checked out. I went in, I asked him, anything special I need to do? Because we're talking about a physical exam. Nope, just come on in.
Hi, my name is Brenda. I'll be your doctor.
Nope. I walked in. I still to this day, I never saw the doctor. I wouldn't know him if I bumped into him at the store. Wouldn't know him if I saw him. I went in, I spoke to the physician's assistant. He came in. The nurse did my blood pressure, temperature, and all that other good stuff. The PA came in. I told him, I'm here just for a physical. I'm 50, here for a checkup. When was your last tetanus shot? When was this? When was that? All this other good stuff. Says, okay, well, you need to go over to the lab and have blood drawn. And I said, okay, I didn't know that was coming. And he said, oh, yeah, it's routine. I said, okay, fine. I went in and the appointment was in the afternoon. I went over to the lab and they said, did you fast? I said, no. And she said, did you eat today? I said, yeah. And I asked, is there anything special I need to know about this? Fasting means you've had nothing but clear water for the last 12 hours. I said, well, this is going to be an adventure because I've had breakfast and lunch today. Well, I've got to take your blood. The form's here, so we've got to take it. So she took my blood. And of course, my cholesterol was high because I had had a particularly nice sausage sandwich that day. I didn't hear nothing for about 2 weeks. Then I got a phone call from the doctor's office. Said, okay, the doctor has filled a prescription for you. You need to take, I don't remember what it was, some anti-cholesterol drug because you had elevated cholesterol. I said, okay, well, what was my cholesterol number? She says, I don't know. I said, okay, is there somebody there who does know what that number was? No, there's nobody here with that information. So you need to take this 3 times a day. Then we're going to test. Then we'll have you in for another blood test in 30 days. I says, okay. So you're telling me a doctor that I have never seen in my life, who doesn't know me from Adam's cat, is going to prescribe me a drug with a bunch of side effects, and you want me to go down and pick it up and then go get another blood test in 30 days when you don't know anything about me? And you could hear the gears starting to turn in the head. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to go find another doctor. I don't want a pill pusher. I want somebody who was going to treat the patient. I don't want somebody who was going to look for a number. And that just wasn't the doctor for me. The next doctor I went to, all the way in Carson City, 30 miles away, I went on the recommendation of my parents, by the way. And the first person I saw was the, I guess, nurse. I still don't know who it is. It's not a physician's assistant, but it is an assistant. Took the blood pressure, took the temperature. The very next person I saw was the doctor. And we got to talking and this, that, and the other. And I told him what had happened with the last doctor. He said, okay, well, no. Have you eaten today? I said, yes. Nobody told me I needed to fast. He says, okay, tomorrow come in, get your blood test. Don't eat anything for 12 hours except clear water. Okay, fine. That worked out fine. We stuck with that doctor until we moved up here. That's the kind of doctor I want. A doctor who's going to keep me informed, actually meet me. Turns out my cholesterol was just fine. Yeah, it was the high side of normal, but it was still in the normal range. I don't want somebody that's going to prescribe something to me sight unseen. So that's the kind of doctor I'm looking for.
I know exactly what your problem is, Mr. Lindsay. Take 5 of these and call me in the
Exactly.
morning.
And I'll be honest, I don't care if the guy's from outer Mongolia. If he's going to treat the patient and not some number, that's the doctor I want.
So you're here for the deep tissue colon extraction, are you?
No, I'm here because I broke my arm. Fix it.
Doc, wait a second. That's not the arm that's broken.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain people are people, man, and looks can be very, very deceiving.
Doctor, it hurts when I go like this.
Well, don't do that.
I've got the answer for you. Well, what if the doctor, because in the beginning, JP and you were saying, I don't care if he's tattooed up and stuff if it's an emergency. You
If it's
said
an emergency, yeah.
But JP is in his open to the world. We are the world.
Well, we are, but yeah.
We are the future.
Mm-hmm.
We are the world. So he's in all this thing. Okay, fine. But I'm sorry, me. But what if you are the world, you are the future vantage that you're doing? By the way, I'm the one attaching that to you. But what if you come into that doctor's office and he's got a 1980s punk rocker thing painted in pink and green? It says, "What seems to be the problem? Hello, welcome, Mr. Lindsay. How are you doing?" With a clip on from his nose to his thing. See, all I'm getting at is that there's a level that's too far. That's too far when appearances don't match the scenario in which. Well, go ahead.
And you would have to think that a doctor, of all people, would know that. You would have to think that a doctor would know that's going to put some people off.
Yeah.
But you also know that people have egos. And there's a lot of, well, I don't care out there. That's where I think the hospital comes into play because, if they have 2 physicians recommended to them that they're trying to get on staff, they're going to be a little bit picky. And maybe a city general hospital is a little less judgmental than for instance, a Catholic hospital,
Well,
or Shriners Hospital for Children, they're probably a little bit more picky.
what if you go into the doctor's office
Mhm.
in some remote village, and since you don't care about appearances and stuff,
It-
you go into, well, let me just say, and you go in, and inside the office there's like chicken cage and feathers running around, and he sits down. Okay, let's help you
you
out.
get what you get when you're in that situation. I mean, you take what you get. If he shakes a bear paw over me with a stick, as long as he sets my arm, I'm cool.
What if he's got all these beads from the lava
I don't
rocks and stuff,
care.
and he's
I don't
and
care.
he's got one of those with the teeth on it and stuff, and like the plumes, and
The
he
the
blows smoke in your face, and you're come on.
That's fine so long as he sets my arm. If he doesn't set my arm, we have a problem. You know,
Next village,
exactly. I
50
mean,
miles, next village.
move it on down the road. If he sets my arm and gets me in a cast, I'm good. I don't care. You know,
He
you
gets
have to pick your battles. And to me, the color of somebody's hair just doesn't matter if I've got a piece of a bus sticking out of the side of me.
no, I'm
You know,
sorry. I'm sorry. I can't go there with you. I understand that that's your what you're saying,
well,
but I can't go.
we all choose which hill we're going to die on, maybe even literally.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think that that's reasonable to me. Um, there's a reason for dress codes. I'm not so I don't know how much clearer I can be.
well,
If you're in dire straits and that's the only freaking option, that's one thing. But in a scenario where you're choosing and or interviewing for a perspective to do whatever, um, there's things that are going to turn you off. It's not
well, yeah,
just
and I'm not saying that there's not. Again, if I'm looking for a doctor to be my family doctor that I'm going to go to when I'm just not feeling well, or if it's time for a checkup or I need a tetanus booster, then yeah, I want somebody who's going to treat me. And yes, appearance is going to come, you know.
and try to find a doctor like that.
So, but again, when push comes to shove, if I've got a piece of metal sticking through my shoulder, I don't give a damn who fixes me, so long as they fix me.
Yeah, well,
you know
that's
and it's
implied.
it the only line I will draw on that is the holistic medicine people. If I'm in a car accident, I want to hear sirens, I don't want to hear wind chimes. So keep your holistic medicine over there, your alternative medicine. I don't care about the chamomile tea and all that other good stuff. Talk to me about that after I'm out of recovery.
Chamomile is good.
It may be good, but I need this piece of metal out of my shoulder.
Try some chamomile for
you
that.
know and all the lining up my chakras is not going to get that out of here. Okay.
Hey, I've got this spike running through my shoulder, and
I'm
then he says, "Here, have some chamomile," and I added some mint leaves on top.
mhm.
Yeah, but how
Well,
about this?
there's no doubt that 99.99999% of the medications we get are extracts from some plant or protein or something like that. So I get that there is probably something to some of these quote unquote herbal remedies. And this is an unpopular opinion in some circles, and I know it, but I'm sorry, it's just the case. My opinion is that if alternative medicine actually worked, it wouldn't be called alternative, it would be called medicine. It's just my opinion. Now, if you really want to get into, like Linda says, if you want to get into essential oils for a broken arm, you go right on ahead. I'm going to somebody who knows how to set a bone and then put me in a cast. You know,
Yeah.
I want to hear sirens, not wind chimes.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that that's a no brainer because of the society we live in with the advances that we're generally aware of. I think that's a given. But as far as the whole other thing of the dress code and whatnot, if it's extreme, it's gonna raise some flags. I would dare assume in most folks,
Mhm.
especially given a sensitive doctor situation, because it's not normal
Yeah,
It's not seen. You know, I just think that this is a scenario that was put forth. I don't know how we arrived at it,
I don't either.
but I think it is
Well, uh, uh,
the physical aspect.
mhm.
We're not. I'm not suggesting that whether they're ugly, good looking, somewhere in between. Like there's no
Yeah, that doesn't matter to me because,
what
like Jamie said, I'm not trying to date you. I just want you to patch me up so I can go home.
what it has more to do with is the attached scenario that tattoos in that specific thing
Yeah.
suggests. It suggests a little bit more of a laissez-faire attitude
Hmm.
or rock and roll free spirit. I don't want that. I want a calculated person.
And again, it depends on the context. It depends on the scenario, things of that nature.
Yeah,
I had to be careful. For instance, when I was selling real estate, I had to be careful because appearances are deceiving. You have a couple come in where he's in a business suit and she's very well dressed. And, okay, fine. What are you looking for? And we go down their list, the criteria. They want this, they want that, they want the other, they don't want this, they don't want that. And that's fine. But you have a young couple come in and she's in blue jean cutoffs and a halter top, and he's wearing, a Grateful Dead t shirt and a pair of Holy Blue jeans. You'd be amazed at what these people can afford. But if you start treating them like, oh, I got to show you this side of town because you can't afford this, you can not only talk yourself out of a sale, you can insult individuals. And in a small town like this, word travels fast. Don't go to him, he's going to treat you like trash. So you have to be careful and get to know people when you're in a situation where you may be working with them for a few months because looks can be deceiving.
yeah. It can be the case,
Hmm.
although it's totally two different scenarios and two different points. Even though they seem that they're similar, they're not. The doctor thing is a thing all on its own because you're putting your
Well,
hands in the in you're putting your life or your well-being in the hands of somebody, and
agreed.
the standard notion is that they're not their life isn't spent, thinking of the Grateful Dead, and even though they may, but
Hmm.
not to the extent that they have teardrop tattoos under their eyes and frickin' all these other bodily whatnots. That's not appropriate for the now. On the flip side, it could very well be easily that a person that does all that junk and is in this field of medicine at the level of the doctor or surgeon or whatnot, that they're highly skilled beyond compare.
Hmm.
That's true.
Yep.
The only thing is, unless it's a critical situation where there's no choice, I wouldn't make that decision. I don't. I think there's too much risk at play for my comfort to be at ease, because that's also a part of it. Um, in that
Well,
scenario. But if it's something like you're gonna work with somebody and they're maybe a rocker or even, I don't know, a rapper,
hmm well,
okay, that's
what, what,
another.
but what
That's
I'm
another.
getting at in both cases, and the reason I think that they are similar is you cannot determine skill level by appearance.
Yeah, but one of them is less risky.
I don't know how you figure that because a person could have a whole colony of earrings running down one side and be the most skilled brain surgeon on the face of the earth. The appearance doesn't really have anything to do with the skill, is what I'm getting at. Just as appearance doesn't always dictate financial status. So,
The reason it's different is
mhm,
because you're looking at the appearance in any scenario, but I'm being very specific. With a
uh,
doctor, It's not
I'm being
normal.
specific as well.
With a doctor, you would agree, I would assume, because it's actually I've never seen it, but maybe it exists. The
Mhm.
majority of doctors don't go in that direction that
Oh
you're
yeah, I
saying.
agree with you. You're absolutely right.
It's not normal, and by normal I mean on a sliding scale of
Right.
that field and the scenario that you're putting yourself into. It makes no freaking sense to me. However, in any other scenario, maybe it's a car salesman, or maybe it's they're working at just any number of things, where the risk or the where you're placing yourself in is not something to do with a medical procedure. That's different. Now, if a person is done up like that at a bank and you're about to deposit money, I would opt not to do it with that person. Not if they're well, if they're even if they're a teller, it's inappropriate for the situation. It
Well,
doesn't mean that the person, maybe the person is the greatest person on earth and the most honest and the this and that, or if you're gonna make a backroom deal with a
mhm,
person and or some sort of deal,
mhm.
there's certain things that you look for. So I'm not trying to say to exclude appearance, but everything according to the scenario um,
Well,
that 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 is included, and surgery or something like that.
mhm.
I don't know if I would not be at ease. I'll say honestly,
Now,
it makes no sense
um,
to me.
I, I, if there's any comfort for you, I would probably estimate that 75% of the country would agree with you hands down. No questions asked. I just don't think that appearance dictates skill. And again, I'll stand by my statement. I really don't care what the person looks like. If they're a good doctor and can fix me up, fix me up. That's all I need. That's all I want.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that appearance
So,
dictates skill.
yeah. Well,
I'm
no,
saying,
that was a qualifier for me. I don't think that it does. The best looking, most professional lawyer in the world may be the absolute worst attorney you want to hire to keep you out of
see,
jail.
see, I
And and by just by you start at the top, just by process of elimination, you are going to end up with the world's worst doctor. And chances are he looks just as professional as the world's best.
okay. So that's good. I would bet money that if you were given the option, well, let's throw that out because you layered a few things there, and so my argument is not to do with appearance doesn't dictate intelligence or skill or this or that. That's not the
Right.
argument.
Understood. Understood.
I know that that's the argument that you're making, but
Mhm.
I'm not making that argument. My argument is that risk assessment, considering the category of, be it the doctor,
Mhm.
you do not take that into account, especially
Okay.
considering the reality. What's the reality? Find me a doctor that's dressed like a leather clad motorcycle evil Knievel. Not going to happen. You might find some on the weekends when they're not working, but when they're in the job and
Right,
such,
because most medical centers have a dress code, and you will be in scrubs, you will be in this coat,
right.
you will be in that. Right.
There's a standard. There's something to be. There's standards that are expected.
Mhm.
I think that's very normal and reasonable, and I mean it is what it is. So, but that doesn't mean I'm not suggesting that a person that's, I don't know, even scruffy and this and that doesn't have the precision and skill, or
Mhm.
couldn't have the precision and skill to perform. I'm just saying that my decision to opt out of
And I
treating
agreed with that.
badly,
And I agreed with that.
right? So I'm not saying that it's an incapable. I know that appearances have nothing to do with skill level, but when you're making decisions, you have to sort of figure, well, is this something that I want to go down? It's not normal. It's not what you expect. In
But
certain situations, I don't know that it's the smartest thing to do,
I,
but
I but I think that what you're talking about is only natural because it's in all of us. In even in the most mundane of situations, if you walk into a hospital and you need treatment for something, You're not bad enough you need an ambulance, but you're so bad you can't wait for a doctor's appointment. You got to go in and get emergency treatment now. You're in pain. You're going to walk up to somebody who looks like they know what they're doing. You're going to bypass everybody who looks like they're just down here from radiology and they're delivering x-rays, and you're going to head straight for the the main admissions. you know Look, I'm bleeding here, somebody needs to look at this. So I get exactly what you're saying, and
I
that
think
is that is only natural, I think.
it's reasonable.
Mhm. Yeah, I do too. It's more than reasonable. I think it's natural. I think that's innate in all of us.
If
We're
we
not going
lived
to
in a
walk past them and open up the door that says supplies. We're
yeah,
not going to
I
do
don't
that.
think this is even a under it should even if we lived in a reality where doctors
Mhm.
by tradition wore
Mhm.
tattoos up and down, then in that reality, I, where that's the standard and we're all accustomed to it, and that defines the quality of doctors and the standards of, then I think that most people would go. But that in this reality, it's what you're saying right now. It just because it is.
Mhm.
However, the skill question that you're saying, of course, a person could be completely tattooed, but but I wouldn't take that risk unless I had
Now,
to.
let me turn it around a little bit, and let's say that this doctor was in an accident and he had severe burning scars that were visible. Would that make a difference to you?
No, but that's different
Well,
because
that's what I know it's different, and that's what I'm asking.
well, I'm answering.
Okay.
That's different.
Mhm.
A tattoo is a decision that you make.
Understood.
It doesn't match the the job criteria
I would agree with you
traditionally.
there. I would
What?
tend to agree with that.
I just simply I don't see any other way. I mean, it's not the time when you're in an office to
Mhm.
be an open-minded person in terms. I mean, not closed-minded, but you get the point. It's not
Yeah,
the time to be a free spirit and yeah, man, that's so cool. And are we gonna listen to Diamond Daryl and the Misfits later? And no, that's not the time for that. It just makes
yeah,
no sense. So now, a burn is not a consequence of a decision. It's an accident that occurred to a person.
sure.
It
Okay,
holds no weight. I mean, it might be unpleasing to look at,
okay.
depending on what the severity of it
I,
is.
I
But
just wanted to see if there was a line there. I just wanted to
I
see.
think I've been very clear. It has nothing to. So imagine if the person's black.
Hmm.
I'll go to the extreme.
Hmm.
Like I'll go to the extreme because my point is so clear. It's reasonable to me, but maybe I don't know. I think it's reasonable to most people on Earth,
Hmm.
or I'm assuming that, but it makes no difference if they're
Absolutely not.
Chinese. If they're Chinese, it makes these.
Hmm.
This falls under the category of appearance
Hmm.
because those are appearance features.
Hmm.
A person's skin tone, this and that, or whatever. Those are appearance scenarios,
Hmm.
categories. The cat the
You're down to
different
skills.
the problem is a tattooed up person is not normal. Now you can make the argument um, that you've never been seen by, let's say, a Chinese doctor or a Cuban doctor. Let's say
Mhm.
I have no problem seeing a Cuban doctor. They're highly
Me
skilled
neither. I
stuff.
don't care. Yeah.
But wait a second. But if you haven't, you might say, well, is there a cultural thing that, depending on what the problem is, you could have all sorts of thoughts. But those are cultural thoughts and whatnot.
Hmm.
But if they're tattooed up,
Hmm.
it's so out of the norm. So, it could be an Indian doctor, it could be, those are appearance type things. But tattooed doesn't match.
I would tend to agree with you. I tend to agree with you that kind of presentation, let's say, is not conducive to somebody that's going to go to medical school. I would tend to agree with you on that.
I think
But
so.
there's always an outlier. You will find outliers out there. And I'm more for the skill. I have been seen by Chinese doctors. I have been seen by Indian doctors. I have been seen by black doctors. I had a Vietnamese dentist down in down in Nevada. Um, Again, it's skill to me, you know, and it's less about presentation. Now, obviously, if he comes in with grease under his fingernails because he was just, pulling the transmission out of a 57 Chevy, we're going to have a discussion. You're not touching me with those hands. I don't care who you are. But, you know, I'm more concerned with his competence and his skill than anything else. And demeanor and bedside manner have a lot to do with it as well,
Oh wait,
because,
that's a
you know,
judgment. That's
yeah,
a
it is a
judgment.
judgment,
You're
because I'm not
judging.
gonna, if you are a jerk, get away from me. I don't want to deal with you, because we're going to be just fine. You don't want to deal with me? Good. I don't want to deal with you. Next. You're not the only doctor on the face of the earth.
So you, you know the thing of the Darwin Awards.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So there's a few billion people on Earth,
Oh yeah.
and human beings fall under the category of human beings.
Hmm. People are people. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it.
But within the category of human beings, and under the category of billions of people spread across the world, you're going to find an enormous amount of people making a lot of different decisions on in similar scenarios,
Hmm.
but radically different than what a whole bunch of other people. And in other words, there's a lot of human beings making decisions under same circumstances, picking different directions that end up in different. So it's just a complicated thing. So
Sure.
this thing about the Darwin Award and stuff. So there's people that make really dumb decisions
Sure.
often enough that it reaches critical
And
mass.
they remove themselves from the gene pool. Yes.
Okay, there's also this whole world of bias.
Hmm.
There's this whole world of judging people by physical appearance,
Hmm.
like my Mick Jagger thing, where he's slanky and parroting across the thing. That's a judgment call on a visual
Hmm.
that brings up not very pleasant for me to enjoy the music the way that I would want. But for millions of people,
Hmm.
it's perfectly acceptable. It's just not for me for some reason. I just don't like that slanky, this and that. Okay. Um but the category of danger of me not listening to or watching Rolling Stone concerts online is a personal choice, and this and that, and the risk is low. But now to get to critical mass, when it comes to things that put your that you're it's a very sensitive moment.
Yeah.
You don't want radical, no, you don't want radical unknowns, you don't want strange curveballs. I don't. Let me
Mhm.
not say you, I'm just saying that I want all those, as many variables. And it's true, it might be that well, it's true, even though you account for as much as you can, you never know, because you
Sure.
never know what's up. But within reason, you try to control for some crazy things. um but not everybody has my judgment, obviously.
Well,
People
sure.
have different
You you
people have
have to
different,
do what's best for you.
right, people have different judgments. So what I
Sure.
wanted to say about that, there's a thing, there's a study which I think they call it, um, harm avoidance.
Hmm.
and they took a bunch of people and they basically they took the DNA and they tried to find, what do these people have in common once they did tests on them
Mm-hmm.
that seem to have high avoidance of danger or threat danger and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. I don't know what the level of seriousness the study falls under, but they'll
Mm-hmm.
look for different genes, and they'll say people that have these genes tend to go for high avoidance of danger
Mm-hmm.
or risk or such,
Mm-hmm.
and people that lack those genes tend to go this. Now, the level at which they place that as a sure thing depends on the amount of people that they test
Sure.
and the conclusions that they arrive that they can actually parse out that's happening, and so then they move the needle in the direction of it's highly likely, somewhat likely, whatever. Mine, at least whatever thing came out to high.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, according to that study, under their criteria, under those circumstances, by no means
Mm-hmm.
official stamp it with a rubber stamp, but I can see it in myself
Right.
anyhow, but whatever, that I have high harm avoidance. In other words, I will try my best to avoid any
Mm-hmm.
scenario that will create a situation where I will fall into. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to escape it every time, but
No, but you're not going to let yourself be put into those kind of situations on a daily basis.
the attempt is that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that said, that might play a role in my worry, but I think that anyways, um, so many people making decisions. There's gonna be people that are gonna go to that doctor all tattooed up,
Sure.
and they're gonna say, "I'm sure there is."
Well,
I tend to believe that most people are gonna want what actually most doctors end up appearing,
mhm.
not appearing in terms of race or appearing in
No,
terms
but a peer professional.
right, and
Yeah.
it's a cultural thing.
I yeah, I yeah, I think it is. To a point. I think Western world it is a cultural thing. Um,
Yeah,
but it's in all walks of life. I mean, um, when asked, most people prefer a male airline pilot. That's not to say that there aren't very talented, capable, skilled female pilots out there. It's not saying that at all. But if you take 100 potential passengers and you ask them individually, one on one, not in mass where people can see or hear, but you ask them one on one, would you prefer your pilot to be male or female? The majority pick male pilots. I don't understand fully why,
that's cultural.
but I think it is. But it's cultural in the Western world, mainly because that study's been done in the UK. It's been done here in America. It's been done in Switzerland of all places, and a couple of other countries that I don't remember right off the top of my head. But they found that overwhelmingly, the overwhelming majority would prefer to have a male pilot, and I still don't understand why. Seems to me if you're a competent pilot,
Well, I'll throw it back at you in a different way to see what you say, because we were
mhm,
talking about this doctor thing.
sure.
Let's take it in a direction. So, I personally have no problem
Hmm.
voting for a female president in our
Hmm.
country, or a black president,
Hmm.
or of any background,
Yeah.
as long as they're American. So they could be,
Well, they have to be American, but yeah,
well, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
It could be even of Indian background.
Hmm.
I personally give no
Yeah,
care,
that doesn't enter into it. I'm with you there.
but what I do care is that the criteria that surrounds the mind and spirit and action of that individual
And that's how it should be.
Well, because we can get so far with looks, with which is in a sense what you were saying. You can have,
Mhm.
but here's my question, throwing it back at you in a different way. What? And I'll open it with saying, but I will not vote unless it's an extreme situation where the choices it's. But I
Yeah,
would not if
all
you're
things
put.
being equal.
But if you put in front of me a president candidate that's tattooed from head to toe, like we're talking about, and this and that, like some
Mhm.
sort of vision of like rock and roll to head the country. Excuse me, you in that scenario, it's a no. Of course, I'm saying this in the broad context. If it just it doesn't match now, if the choice is that, but he's got a good sense, he or she's got a good sense of the standards that one
Mhm.
agrees with, and the other person is completely nicely dressed, and if it's that duality of a situation, I have
Mhm.
no choice. But what I would prefer
Yeah.
is a traditional, more or less presenting
Yeah.
looking person. So what would you do?
I follow the policies. I
Mhm.
vote policies. I'm a policy voter, and that's all there is to it, you know.
but
And
but
I don't care what they look like because again, I'm not dating the individual. I would prefer somebody who is serious about the job, someone who knows what they're doing, and someone who falls who represents what I believe in strongly.
is it appropriate that the president would come out all decked out in punk rock affair? Um, honestly,
That wouldn't be my first choice, but if push comes to shove like you, that's the candidate, then
mhm,
that's who gets my
right.
vote.
But the
Because
key,
I'm going to vote for the policies that are closer to mine,
but the
closest
key
to
is the key is that that fashion choice
mine. Hmm.
is inappropriate for the role or position or situation. And in order to overcome and accept that person's fashion, it has to be a do or die situation. But if the option was there to have someone that's within the standard, um, to control for those variables, be it cultural or not. Like again,
Hmm.
if the standard is everybody's tattooed and then you have one, I get that in an alternate universe. But in this universe, it makes no freaking sense. It makes no sense.
Well, in our culture, it doesn't, but you get someplace like Samoa, the tattoo is seen as something that leaders do, and the chief will, I mean, be covered neck down, be just completely covered in tattoos. That is seen as status. That's their culture. But you take that same person and put them in a suit where you don't see most of it. You may see some around the sleeves. You're not going to see what his feet look like. Maybe a little bit by the neck, but probably not because high button and the necktie. What I'm getting at is our culture is different from others, and what we deem to be maybe not appropriate, other cultures are just the opposite, or it is perfectly acceptable. But I, on the whole, I'm in agreement with you in certain situations. I wouldn't want an attorney like that either. I wouldn't want, it wouldn't be my choice for a personal family physician, the doctor that I go to when I'm not feeling well or when I need a tetanus shot. I probably wouldn't do that either. But in a do or die situation where I'm on a gurney being rushed in, I don't give a damn who's working on me so long as they get me fixed up.
Right. It would have to be in a situation that's an extreme
Mm,
do or die situation, and there's no other
right.
choice because the other you're what you're doing is you're weighing. There's a preference thing because the reason they play the soft music while you're waiting in the thing. They have the magazines, maybe a little coffee machine. It's to put people at ease.
Hmm.
There's a whole, so that's all important. Um, you know, I think it's a no-brainer in the reality that we live in.
Hmm.
And it's funny because it's not only the United States too. Yeah, there's the Samoan and Hawaii, right? The
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
the culture there, but you can go through all South America. You can go through all Europe. You
Hmm.
can go to China or Asia broadly. You could go Japan. You could go Russia. You could go across I mean, you'd have to go into the deepest of jungles or the furthest of islands, or you know, I mean, or in the Middle East, they have different types of dress, but still, it's a formality. They're
Right.
not dressed like
Well,
crap. They're
you
dressed
know,
nice in their
yeah,
variety,
right.
but you
When
can
in Rome, yeah.
but you can tell that there's a symmetry to,
Hmm.
oh, the profession, where it sits and stuff. Um, you don't want a scattershot situation, so that's kind
Not
of
if you have a choice. I won't fault you for that logic. And again, I think 95, I think 75% of, I almost said 95. No, I think 75% of any people you ask would be the same.
I
Would
think
say the
nine.
same thing.
I think most
So,
people, maybe 90% in Miami Dade County at
mhm.
least, according to the doctors' choices themselves. And I don't know all the doctors, but like there's practices everywhere. I and
I,
if and I show me a doctor in the United States that's dressed like a punk rocker and or tattooed up, and that would be something. It'll be a one off.
it would be an outlier for sure, but it goes beyond that. I mean, one of the poll results that I saw, um, and I don't remember even why I was looking into this kind of thing. People 35 years old and younger prefer a doctor that's older than them. Once they hit around 40, they don't really care. Once they hit around 60, they expect the doctor is going to be younger than them because by that time, most people are thinking about retirement or they are retired. That doesn't mean there aren't any 70 or 80 or 90-year-old doctors out there. I'm sure there are. But people up to about the age 35, they expect their doctor to be older than them. They'll talk a lot of trash about boomers and Gen X and all this, that, and the other. But when it comes to somebody who's going to be working on you and fiddling around with your body, they want some that there's something about that age and perceived experience that comes with that age. They want that. When they get into their 40s, 50s, they don't really care. And I guess, I'm 63, so that gets me, I guess, into that later age where I don't really care either. If it's a competent doctor, fine. I don't care if your name is Fred or if your name is Ethel. Fix me.
What if the doctor, let's go extreme.
And I don't care if you're 28 or 58, fix me.
What if the doctor is in his 20s,
Hmm.
all tattooed up? He comes in through the door and says, "Hey Doc, how you doing?" Or "Hey Mark, how you doing?" And he's got his skateboard and a little backpack and stuff. So what's going on?
It's funny you say that. Our daughter, we were in Germany and our daughter broke her arm. And the guy who set her arm and casted her up, put her in a cast, was leaving to go home when he saw her come in. She had been treated by him before. He was heading home. He had bike shorts, tank top, his helmet, and he had his bike on his shoulder and his backpack slung on the other shoulder. Saw her come in and went, "Oh no.
That
Again, girl," and turned around and went back into the hospital. so that he could be the one to patch her up. She had been
But
hit by a car.
but that's different.
So but it was just funny when you talk about coming in on a skateboard. He wasn't on a skateboard, but he was heading home on his 10 speed. You know what I
I
mean?
tried to give you the trifecta because that's
Mhm.
normal. He's Germany. He's going home. You know, and this is his transportation. That's not. I gave you the trifecta of a kid in his somewhere in his
He
20s
was in
coming
his
in.
20s.
All
He was in his 20s.
I gave you the trifecta. I don't
Mhm.
think you're appreciating here the momentous. The I tried to create as big of a wall for you, but yet you just start.
I don't care.
I
Yeah, I don't care if he's a good, competent doctor. Put your skateboard over in the corner. Please go wash your hands and let's get to work.
Okay, all right. That sounds
You know?
reasonable. That I'm lying, but whatever. I'm saying that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, Linda reminded me you had to go outside because you couldn't stand to hear her yell when he set her arm. That's right. The very first time I saw her start to cry when he went to set her arm, I'm like, check, please. I'm out. I got to go out here. I can't watch that. I know he was trying to help her. I know he was setting her arm and he had to cause pain to end pain, but I couldn't watch it. I could not watch it.
I guess we can end this whole line of thinking of conversation, or unless you have other things to say about it, with one thing that I just remembered, and I think you've seen it too.
Mhm.
It's in the series Norseman.
Okay.
So in the series Norseman, I think it was season two, um, where the one guy wants to take revenge on the bald guy because he burnt him and his family because he was laughing that he was bald, and but
Wow.
he escaped in through the weeds, and then he approached a group of people to commit a revenge act, and there was this plump guy, and he was like he had lipstick and he looked like such a weasel
Hmm.
of a guy, looks, um, and he was giving him his plan to the guys there, but this weasel guy was sitting there. He says, and you, what's your name? We cannot tell this to anybody. And his name was something to the effect of betrayer man or something like that, some ancient Norse. Like he had the name
Hmm.
of someone that would betray you,
Hmm.
matching. Okay, and he could see. So he was being played by the guy, by the actor, exactly what his name was. He
Hmm.
says, "But you wouldn't betray us because your name sounds kind of funny." And he says, "My name is a normal name. It's a normal Norse name.
Hmm.
Yes, it says that I'm a betrayer, whatever. But I am the most honest person in the world."
Hmm.
And he would even do the play. So he did all the whole play.
No,
So,
yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
do you remember that scene more or less, or no? Not really.
That might have been in season 3, which I have not seen yet.
I don't know. I don't remember exactly. But anyways, I don't want to
Hmm.
give it all. But the point is that he went and did exactly what he was told not to do
Hmm.
because it matched his name.
Hmm.
It's a case of
Um,
the
um,
the the person matches the.
cognitive determinism.
Is that what that is?
Yes,
So he
it's a
matches
form of it.
he matches exactly with his name and his outward and what he did. So it was all in line, and yet when asked, they all accept it. I mean, it's a comedy, but
Sure.
the point is, some things are so obvious,
Well, he got that name somehow, you know,
right? And
because
I wish,
surnames were not really, you were Andre of this village. I mean, you were Magnus, this guy's son, you know.
yeah.
So
So if
surnames
they give
really
you
weren't.
some name like, I wish I knew the actual name,
Mhm.
because it's even funnier with the actual name. But it's a great scene. But the
Mhm.
point is that some things sometimes in the reality that we live,
Mhm.
some things, and you can excuse this by going overboard,
Mhm.
but in the context, some things that don't fit,
Mhm.
um, should be cause for at least pause especially if you're putting your life or it's a
Your
sensitive
health. Yeah.
your health.
And I agree with that. You know, most men would prefer to go to a male urologist. Most women would prefer to go to a female gynecologist. That just makes sense to me. And I understand that bias 100%.
Yeah.
So,
Now that the argument can be, which is an interesting thing, that I think this is a given, but to the level that I'm willing to take it. But I would say that because it's the level I'm willing to take it,
exactly.
because I take it to that level because I think it's reasonable.
Well,
Um,
but in this case, you are the shopper. Every time you go to a
right,
doctor, it's a job interview for the doctor
right,
because you are the client, you are the customer, you are the patient. And if you don't like the doctor, you are perfectly within your rights to say adios.
right. For
You know,
anything, it could be even
sure.
an assessment that he gives or a way of expressing himself to
Hmm.
you that leaves you with less confidence than you should
Right.
have.
I'm going to go get a second opinion. Exactly.
Right. So there's a bunch of things involved in there.
Sure.
But um and that's a personal choice, of course.
Sure.
But there's situations like what happened, and I'll say it lightly in a general sense, like what happened months ago with one specific guy that's some sort of talk show guy, where he says that a certain group of people, he doesn't have the confidence to fly with them based on some educational points and this, and that. He leaped into some great assumptions based on skin color, um, attached with some with a political point he was trying to make. The guy's young; he's like in his 20s,
Mhm.
and he's talking. He's making a bunch of points, life points, and he's famous. But he's creating. He's going overboard without knowing it, to my
Well,
liking, based on things that could be perceived as similar to tattoos and this and that. But
well,
them,
there's ignorance and stupidity all over the place.
but a thing such as a racial category or
Hmm.
a skin color or things that, those are not life choices one makes.
Yeah.
Those are, well, it depends because some people do some sort of a transformation, but those are things that people are born with.
Hmm.
That's besides the point, even though it falls in the category of the physical.
And I,
But the well, no, my point. No, my
yeah,
point
I
is a very.
get you.
Here's my point. Even though color falls in the category of the physical, this is not a choice a person makes. A life choice of a tattoo is one thing, but a life choice of 80 tattoos says a whole different other thing in context of a role that you're involved in, and that one has to make a decision just like anything else. Those are different things. But if you're willing to go with an assumption based on that criteria of color, that's not a choice, then you've, in my for my taste, you've overstepped the bound of reasonable or decent or tasteful
Yeah.
or
Human
anything
decency.
else.
Exactly.
Right. So that's a whole other level. That's taking it to a whole other level. You're not judging one person now by their individual choice. You're now judging a whole group of people by something that they have no control of.
Mm.
So there's a difference there. Um, so again, so if
So you don't
somebody,
want no short people working on
yeah, short
you.
people, short people ain't got short people ain't got no. There's, I forget the lyrics.
No reason to live.
No reason he got into a lot of trouble for that,
Yeah.
and he
Um,
wasn't. He wasn't. His intention was actually a good one when he was doing, but he chose short people and it screwed up his old his the
well,
whole
not
thing.
really, because I mean, you know, short people the same are just the same as you and I. And then he says, "A fool such as I, all men are brothers until the day they die." You know.
Yeah, but not really. But yes, because that's the backlash that he got. Because even
Well, no,
this,
that's the lyrics of the song. But yeah, he did get a lot of backlash on it.
no, I know that's the lyric of the song.
But it was quickly forgiven because he became also one of the most successful songwriters in.
The 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 song was written
Mhm,
to critique people being bigots.
mhm,
He chose what he probably would have thought of as the least, because short, height, this and that. But there's a whole universe of short people that didn't
and
appreciate what.
that's subjective too.
Well, there's a whole universe of short people.
Sure.
There's short people out there. That's actually true. I
Mhm,
don't know what the numbers are, but the thing I'm trying to get the point that I'm trying to make is that to those people, and it passed by, but to those people, the
mhm,
notion of, even though it said that the positive,
mhm,
because he's trying to make a positive, but in it he also says they've got little fingers and little feet and going
mhm.
tweet tweet tweet, and so it was so. But he was doing it for a good purpose. He was just using it as
And
a
yes,
counterbalance to a
well,
bigger message. But
what he
it was,
was doing was he was illustrating absurdity by being absurd.
yeah.
And
So
the people who understood that are what brought it up into the top 10, I think in the top 5 when it came out.
yeah, but the point is that the people he was targeting
Mhm.
and didn't take kindly to it,
Oh,
at
well.
least for the time they did.
Yeah,
And so people don't receive the same messages and
that's true.
process it the same way.
That's
So
true.
yeah. So the point being that we do make judgment calls.
Oh, yeah. Everybody is judgmental. Judgment is
Yeah.
what keeps you from picking up the hitchhiker carrying a running chainsaw. Judgment is what keeps you from going into bad neighborhoods at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Judgments is what keeps you from reaching your hand into a fire to pick up a stick. You make judgments on everything
Yeah.
and you judge people daily. And if you don't believe that, wear plaid pants with a striped top. You'll get some judgments.
Yeah.
Wear flip flops, wear sandals and socks. I can't say flip flop for some reason right now, although I just did.
Yeah. There's a
But
lot to judge
mhm,
because we're the camera filming
mhm,
the experience. Um, but there's a level out there that you're either convinced of or not,
mhm.
that crosses from being a fair judgment. Even when it's not fair, you're saying this is still within the bounds of what I'm willing to
Yeah,
accept
but
as a valid judgment call. But then there's crossing that line,
yeah,
and that's different for different people.
and as I said, there's ignorance and stupidity everywhere. So I got to throw this at you here. What Steve
Okay.
said: a good doctor is hard to find. I just don't want a proctologist with hands like Andre the Giant. What's the matter, Steve?
Steve, you're being judgmental there.
Very judgmental. I mean, he suffers from a genetic gigantism. You're gonna never mind.
See?
You're gonna hold that against him because he's gonna hold it against you. You know,
Yeah. This might come to to fists.
or at least it'll feel like it.
it just, it just gets see, talk about taking it overboard. He just went over. He went to the worst extreme. He went to the worst scenario that could possibly plague.
And I can't think of something like that, Steve, without thinking of that scene from the Chevy Chase movie Fletch. He's an undercover. I don't remember what he is, a private detective, a reporter, something like that.
Yeah,
And he's
he was a spy. No, oh no, he was a
so
detective.
he was trying to. So he's in talking to this doctor, and the doctor says, "Okay, bend over. I got to do this check." And He's like, really, Doc? I don't think we need to Moon River. I cannot, you know, I cannot picture any of that discussion without thinking of that scene.
What a nightmare situation. Jeez. And why did you put the freaking ticker tape machine when that came up? Talk about if you want to blow the roof
Moon
off.
River. That's all I have to say from now on. Then you're just gonna lose it.
Um
So, oh man.
yeah, that basically that tops it.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and land it now. I can't think of a real classy way to get out of that line of thought. So let's go ahead and land it. Be done with it.
This went in a very weird. This one went in a very now the ticker tape. Too late for that one.
Well, I wanted to make sure we
Emergency
were done.
emergency landing, emergency land.
Mayday, mayday.
All right, so we go live every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time, and we have a show here on YouTube, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. Trampled Underfoot Podcast. It
On YouTube.
it's gonna hurt me more than it'll hurt you. I don't think so, Doc.
This is going to hurt you a lot more than it's going to hurt me. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a page on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, and we have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. And we're sponsored by
Hardio Media. Look, I talk about him every week. You know I'm going to talk about him every week. Why haven't you gone over there and clicked the contact us link and talk to Steve? You know you want a website. You don't think you do. You want a website. You need a website. It gives you legitimacy. It gives you a web presence. It allows you to create an e-commerce site, establish a web store. It allows you to get into designing and possibly creating your own merch for sale. But none of this can happen if you don't head over to harneomedia.com. Now, you got no excuses. There's a link in every video on this website, on our YouTube channel, and on this website too, now that I think about it. Yeah, that'll work. Click that button, get over there, hit that contact us link, and talk to Steve. And get your website set up. Very, very competitively priced, 100% personalized service. And the best part is he gives you performance, not excuses. So get over there and check it out for yourself. That's harnealmedia.com, HARNEAL media.com. Sponsor of trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
it's still this episode is gonna be titled Scarred.
Moon River.
All right, guys, enjoy your week. Try to forget. Learn to forget. Learn to forget. Learn to forget. Enjoy your week and do the things that you love. Don't do that though. We'll catch you next time. Peace.
Turn your head and cough.
Why?